coaching. Kunoa coaching.
Hi and welcome today, everybody. You are listening to the Kuno podcast with me, Maria Oldfield, and my guest today is the amazing Ed Palace. Ed, how are you doing?
Hi, Maria. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you back. Do you want to reintroduce yourself to all the new listeners and watchers?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Ed Palace. I am a dad, a leadership specialist, I guess, if you will. I've been a police officer for 26 years and a hostage negotiator for about 20 of those years. And my passion is talking about leadership, learning about leadership, and occasionally hoping to teach others a little bit, a few leadership lessons along the way.
Now, when you were on last time, we went all the way into the background of your leadership and what you'd been up to in terms of writing about it so far, but you have come out with a new book. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I did. Thank you. It's called Leader Armor, Leadership for the Law Enforcement First Line Supervisor. And it's designed to kind of bridge the gap. And although it says for the law enforcement supervisor, quite frankly, and I say this in the book, it's really for any new supervisor or even an old supervisor who wants to learn a few new tricks, if you will. But the problem, and as you and I just discussed, at least in the United States, in the law enforcement community, if you become a police officer, no matter where you are in the country, generally you go through about 6 months of pretty intensive training in the police academy. And you learn how to drive fast, and you learn how to shoot all sorts of guns, and you learn defensive tactics, and you learn about constitutional law. And you get literally a tool belt with your gun, with a baton, with pepper spray, with maybe a taser, and you spend 6 months learning how to use those. And then when you graduate, you spend another 3 months with basically a coach. It's called a field training officer. And they ride with you for 3 months to make sure that you're doing the job confidently and competently. And it's a great system. It really is. You get, like I said, anywhere from 9 months to a year's worth of training. The problem I found is that when these same officers, 5, 10, 15 years later get promoted, they study very hard for a test. The tests vary across the country, but somewhere or another, they make it onto a list and then they get promoted. And they're told, good luck. And they're set loose to go supervise people. And very rarely do they get any sort of any training. Occasionally they'll be told to read a book, or maybe they'll be told to take a class, but they're basically told good luck and that's it. So while we do a great job at the beginning, front loading the training for our officers, and when I say officers, I really mean sworn and civilian, because no police force or sheriff's office can survive without a professional staff or civilians who are really the backbone of it. But they're in the same boat as we are. They're promoted and they're not given any tools. So the idea behind this book is I want to arm people with the tools for success through leadership soft skills, learning how to motivate, how to ethically lead, how to be a good follower, how to talk to your boss, how to set expectations, and then how to pull other people up what I call the leadership mountain with you, so that it's never lonely at the top. So that's a kind of a long way of telling you what the book's about.
That's so interesting because, like you say, so many people just end up getting promoted into these positions, and leadership's looked at in some ways as being, I'll be a manager, I'll not be a leader, and that's fine. But then when nobody's following you and you're not doing a great job at managing or leading, then it becomes a bit difficult. And actually, when we go into these positions, it's like you said, there's a whole host of skills that we need to learn to get on. One of the first ones I want to ask you about that you mentioned there was when you said how to talk to your boss. There's a lot of people that they get a boss, and because they're a leader and their boss is a leader and they're not really happy with what their boss is doing, and they want to talk to their boss and try and work that out. The only solutions that really people have come up with is you can talk to your boss but be prepared to leave if it goes wrong, or talk to your boss but do it in a way in which it's not really very challenging. So how can we kind of have a good working relationship as a leader with our boss who may or may not be a leader?
So great question, great observation. And so this whole has to do with a chapter that I wrote in the book called basically it's about followership. In other words, when we're directing our people, our followers, our subordinates, whatever term you want to call them, your people, you're in a leadership role. But when you then turn and put on your other hat, you have to put on your followership hat because you're then following your boss. And I recently ran into this. I got a promotion and I got moved into a position within our police department. And before my boss could reach out to me, I reached out to him and said, hey, boss, can we set up a time to sit down and you go over your expectations with me? Because I wanted to be crystal clear on what my boss wanted from me, because I need that clarity before I can then turn around to the people who report to me. In my case, it's 3 lieutenants, and give them clarity. The problem is a lot of people don't seek out their boss and they don't say, hey, boss, can we sit down and go over some things? Because if it's a good leader, they're going to have a list ready for you anyway. But maybe if it's a leader that needs a little work, it'll get them to think, oh, I'm getting ready to sit down with Marie next week. She wants some expectations. I better give her some. And then you can turn that into a dialogue and you can get clarity if your boss says, I want to be notified of anything important. Okay, boss, what do you consider important? Well, anything. Well, how about this? And then you can give examples and you can kind of get a little more, I almost hate using this word, granular with your boss. But you have to be a little proactive, and it's almost as if you have to lead your boss sometimes. Because I have had bosses that would sit down with me and give me clear expectations from the jump. And I've had to have others where I've had to reach out to them. And usually I go in armed with a list of questions. And obviously, and I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, you have to do it in a very respectful manner, because the idea is part of your job as a good follower is to look out for your boss and make sure that she's not doing anything or he's not doing anything that would lead them astray, and to be able to respectfully challenge him or respectfully challenge her if you think they're making a mistake. But at the same time, understanding they have the final word, they're the boss. So no matter how far you rise in the levels of your organization, everybody's got a boss. And you have to be able to walk away and understand that if you disagree, the boss gets the final say. But a good boss will let you have that say first, and then he or she will say, hey, Ed, I hear what you're saying. We're not doing it this way. I need it done this way. And then it's got to be yes, ma'am, or yes, sir. And then you move forward with the mission.
Are there any tips that you can give people on respectfully challenging?
Yeah. So I would always make it about behavior, never about their personality or them as a person. Because as soon as, and I'm sure you felt this, or any of your listeners have felt this, as soon as I feel like I'm being attacked as a person, my defensive shields, kind of like on Star Trek, my defensive shields go up. And once my shields are up, I'm not hearing anything you're saying after that. All I heard is, Marie told me I'm a micromanager. The shields are up and I'm not listening to anything she says. My hearing is turned off, my listening is turned off, and all I'm hearing, for those of you that are old enough and in the United States to remember the Charlie Brown cartoons, all you hear is the wah, 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 wah that the adults would always sound like for the kids. So I try to get people to think about how to respectfully challenge to avoid those shields going on. Hey, boss, I understand our intention is to accomplish this. I'm not sure if you're aware, but by doing this unintended consequence might arise. And here's the other thing, when you lead up, it's great that you're going to point out a problem, but an exemplary follower will then follow it up with 1, 2, or 3 solutions. Hey, boss, in order to avoid this, we can do this, this, or this. So that's what I would suggest.
Another part of what you said kind of really grabbed me, because you said we've done a little bit on this being lonely at the top, because it can get quite lonely if you're maybe in a situation where there are some things that are going to happen and your team doesn't really know about them, and you're having to kind of shield the politics from the team, but there is politics kind of coming down. There's a lot of things happening, but you can't necessarily say to the team. And one way to get around that is having a mentor. But you mentioned about bringing people up the leadership mountain so you're not lonely up there. What does that mean for you?
So in a law enforcement organization, and probably in some civil service organizations, there's usually some sort of promotion exam or promotion process. Even if there's not a formal process, what I'm talking about is exactly what you said, is finding, let's say you have a team of 8 people. Not all 8 will necessarily want to go a level above where they are. Maybe through your building relationships, because that's really what leadership comes down to, is influence and relationships. You find out that you have 2 people that really want to progress their career. They want to go up the management track. Well, then you offer to mentor and to coach those people. The thing I found through many interviews and thousands of hours in the classroom is a lot of leaders are afraid to mentor other people. And they're afraid because they don't want to get passed up. And it's one of those things where you have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to value the people that work for you so much that you're okay if by helping them and they rise to your same level, that they might eventually pass you up. And that's okay. That's happened to me. It's happened with me and to me. And I think if you do that, you're in even a better situation than most people fear. Most people fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to help Marie. She's eventually going to be my boss and then I'm going to be miserable. No, it's awesome, because if I help Marie, she gets to my level and then she gets promoted above me. Of course, I might be a little sad. I might be a little jealous. But if we work together and we've had that relationship, she's going to be a fantastic boss. Like, she's going to be probably the best boss I've ever worked for, because we have that relationship and that mutual respect. And I can respectfully challenge her because of that relationship. So that's the problem, I think, is a lot of leaders are afraid, and instead of helping people up the mountain, they put their foot on the people that work for them. They don't kick them in the head, but they put just enough pressure to keep them down, and so that they don't rise up. And if we think that those people aren't aware of that, we're fooling ourselves, because when you work for a boss that has advocated for you, and when you've worked for a boss that has kind of kept you down.
Yeah, and it's pretty demotivating actually to work for people like that, because they're intent on telling you that you can't do anything. And actually, it's a testament to the leadership skills that you've got if you can bring people along, and that not only get them to your level but get them above. Because I say to everybody in my teams, I want you to be better than I am, because if you're not, I've not done my job. You should be learning what I know and then improving on it. And actually, some of the people that I found that wanted to come up the management track were not the people that said they wanted to. They were the people that said, no, I don't want to. And actually, they were the best people. It's actually quite strange when that happens.
Because they weren't motivated probably for the wrong reasons. They were motivated for the right reasons.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to kind of, when you're establishing a team as well, it's always good to have a second in command. So I always try and find one of those, because then it's not all on me. It's kind of bringing involvement in the group and giving the group a bit of autonomy, and then letting somebody else kind of take the lead a little bit and show what they can do as well. You're listening to the Kuinua podcast. If you want to ask a question to our experts, just go to kuinuacoaching.com and you will find the link to the podcast where you can leave us a voice message or send us an email, and we will ask your question direct to the expert. That's kuinuacoaching.com. Kuinua Coaching is set up to offer mentoring, coaching and courses in leadership, negotiation and soft skills. If you're interested in finding out more about what Kuinua Coaching has to offer you, you can get in touch via Facebook, Instagram. You can type Kuinua into Google. You can email us on kuinuacoaching@gmail.com or go to our website at kuinuacoaching.com. That's kuinuacoaching.com.
Yeah, because you're not always going to be there to run the show. You're going to have a vacation. You're going to have a sick day. Goodness forbid, eventually all of us move up, move out, or retire. So you're absolutely right, Marie. You do need to be training what I call a good number two, or a couple of good number twos. And it's a great opportunity for them to step up and lead when you're gone, because a good leader, if I'm working for you and you're off for a week and you're an outstanding boss, when you come back, you're going to meet with me and you're going to say, hey, Ed, let's go over some stuff. How'd it go this week? What decisions did you make? And then you kind of critique things in such a way that I grow. I learn from any mistakes I made. You praise me for any good decisions I made. And then the next time, I'm looking forward to stepping in for you again. And that's how you get me ready so that when I am promoted, I've already been doing it. I don't, there isn't such a huge gap. It's a very much more narrow gap because you've been coaching me and mentoring me.
Which chapter in the book do you think has kind of got the most important message?
So it's funny, you talked earlier about management versus leadership. And I mean, you can find, it drives me crazy. You find the articles and the memes and everything, be a leader, don't be a manager. Or the question is always, what should you be, a manager or a leader? And I fundamentally say that it's the wrong question. It's not a binary decision. It's not one or the other. It's both, because you have to have good management skills. And when I say management, I mean, you manage things. You make sure people are paid on time. You make sure that they have the proper health insurance. You make sure they have good working conditions, that they feel safe when they come to work. Those are all management skills, and they're not really sexy. But if people don't get paid, they can't take care of their family. If they can't take care of their family, I don't care what type of leader you are, they're probably not going to be following you for very long. So one of the things I suggest in the book is that management is a foundation for leadership. You have to have a good foundation. And then once you have that good foundation, then you work on your leadership skills. But the crux of the book really is leaders aren't born. I mean, we're all born. I make a joke about the zombie apocalypse, but research has shown that, yes, there is a small percentage of the population that are born, and I'm saying roughly about 10%. They're born with some innate leadership skills. Doesn't necessarily mean that will make them good leaders, but they're kind of born with some natural ability. Well, for the rest of us, 90%, we have to work at it. The good news is we can work at it, because leadership is, as you know, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, leadership is a set of skills that you can work on. Basic skills such as listening, such as developing relationships with people, showing empathy with them, and then caring about them, bringing them up to wherever their mountain is, whether it's management track or something else, but helping them achieve their goals. And those can all be worked on. They're all skills that can be worked on. So that's kind of the main message, I think.
Do you think that there are people with kind of skill sets that are more suited to be managers or leaders? Because one of them's kind of process driven and one of them's person driven. And when you're kind of looking at maybe a more technical person, they might like to optimize, or a more people centered person, they might like to deal with people. Because when we see like job adverts, they're often for managers, they're never for leaders, they're often for managers. So when people go for that job, they're basically saying, I can do this process, I can pay people. But how then do they go on to lead people if they're not really a people person? It can be quite a disconnect between the two roles in the way that they're kind of split apart in the general workplace. What would your comments be on that?
So I'm kind of a big fan of the DISC personality assessment. And I won't dive really deep into DISC, but basically what you're talking about is obviously there are task-oriented people and there are people-oriented people. And both can be very effective leaders. So I want to say that right from the get-go. But you're right. Some of those that are very task-focused, if they don't pay attention to their people skills, they can rub people very wrong. And quite frankly, they are more likely to be given the micromanager label, because they're so detail-oriented, which is great, but often they're detail-oriented in a very narrow way. So in other words, it has to be done my way. Even if the results are the same, if you do it differently than me, I'm going to tell you to correct it, and then I can come across as a micromanager. On the opposite end is the people person, the one that always wants to be friends with everybody, and they can carry a conversation. They remember your kids, they remember your kid's birthday, but then sometimes they forget some details that can come make a project come crashing down. So it's one of those things where any that is carried too far or too much to an extreme can become a weakness. And the idea is to have some awareness about your personality, so that if I am very detail oriented, I know maybe I need to tone that back just a little bit and raise my people side. And if I'm very people oriented, maybe I need to tone that back a little bit and become a little more detail oriented. But that comes down to the individual personality. But the good news is I don't, I'm sure you have too. I've had leaders to both extremes that have been really good. And I've had a couple to both extremes that have been really bad too.
When you say as well about kind of basic skills, when you actually break down things like leadership, it comes down to communication and listening and these things that people think that are really easy, and it's often people are looking for this silver bullet and they say, oh, there's got to be some sort of solution to it, and the answer is yes, it's listening, it's communication. But then they find that so difficult to get to the bottom of, and to kind of train their mindset and things like that in a leadership position. Why does it become so complex for people when in essence it's quite basic and easy?
So I think what it is yes, it is basic. It's easy to understand. We'll just listen, but it's much harder to do. And to give you a quick example, like I said, I've been a hostage negotiator for about 20 years. And when you first become a hostage negotiator, one of the things you do is you go through a 2, 3, sometimes 4 week school. And the majority of that is about listening. And listening is one of those skills that everybody thinks they're good at, but very few people are good at it. And so, for instance, one of the chapters I have in the book, I give you a model to use for listening, and it's called the simple model of listening, SIMPLE, and it stands for single task. So the first thing to do is to single task. For instance, as I was talking to you, my phone rang. I thought I had it on silent, but I had it on vibrate. So I looked down at my watch and hit stop real quick. But that's a horrible example of me trying to listen when my phone is ringing. So if I'm your boss and we're having a conversation, and all of a sudden I say, "Oh yeah, keep going, Marie," and I pick up and I start texting, and I'm putting it in frame so you can see, what message does that give to you? It devalues you as a person. So the very first thing is shut down all your devices and just focus on the person. And then I have the I in simple is inquire. So I'm going to be constantly asking you questions. I'm not trying to make statements at first. I'm trying to, as Stephen Covey says, listen to understand before I can reply. Then the M is minimal encouragers. So when you're talking, I'm encouraging you. I'm saying, really, huh, those things. So I'm just kind of filling the space so you will continue to talk. And then when I think I understand, the P is paraphrase. So I'm going to rephrase what you said to make sure that we're talking. During this whole time, if I sense any emotions, I will label them. That's the L, label emotions. Boy, Marie, you sound really angry about this. Angry, you have no idea how angry I am. And boom, you get those emotions out. And the last thing is the E is to embrace silence. Because if you're quiet, the other person will feel uncomfortable and they will fill that silence by talking. So that's a real quick down and dirty explanation of the listening made simple model that I include. But it's one of those skills that everybody thinks they're good at it, but we're not, because we don't practice it. It's a very perishable skill, so that if you're not constantly working on it, you're not going to be very good at it. Nobody wants to admit that.
You'd have to be good at listening to do podcasts.
Yes, we could probably roll you into our negotiator team with zero extra training, and you do great.
It's amazing how much you can get by on kind of just filling in the spaces and then leaving a gap. It's amazing how much people will talk and tell you everything about themselves if you just go, yeah, oh really, oh that's interesting, and then just leave a silence and then they just carry on.
I challenged myself once. I was flying to Vermont for a consulting thing. I think it was an hour and a half trip, and there's a lady next to me in the plane, and I was working on my listening skills. And my challenge was to never make a statement, was to only ask questions. And at the very end, she was very complimentary, said what a good listener I was. And then she said, "Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I don't even know your name." And it was perfect. It kind of was like my final exam, where I could, basically all I did was what you said. And honestly, now that I think about it, it's probably what you do as a podcaster. You just ask questions, you kind of nod your head, and then they fill in all for 90 minutes. She must have talked 98% of the time, and then the 2% I would ask her a question or a follow-up or do a minimal encourager, that kind of thing. And it was actually kind of fun. It was challenging, but it was kind of fun.
I did hear of this done in practice, and somebody did a study where so many therapists were kind of rated by their patients, and the ones that listened and never really said anything and then paraphrased it at the end got the highest ratings as therapists.
believe it. In the coaching world, that's what when you do kind of executive coaching, that's exactly what it is. You're really listening, because the whole idea behind coaching is people think it's about giving advice, but it's not. It's about getting the person to figure out the problem on their own, and the challenge is asking the right questions. It's
actually really interesting, because the misconception is that we're all supposed to be throwing out our point of views and our advice, but actually it's not the way things work.
No, well, I think it is the way things work. I think most people, if you come to me with a problem, instead of asking you questions and letting you come up with the answer, I think, and I will say this especially as my gender, we tend to be problem solvers. We tend to think, whether another guy or another girl comes to us, it's asking us about a question. What we hear is, fix my problem. And that's not always what the other person's looking for. Maybe they just want to bounce things off of you.
You really have to train yourself out of that, because I'm the same. I want to try and fix the problem straight away, but the person's not there to get a solution. They're there to just talk through it and figure out their ideas about it.
And how often when we're given advice, how often do we take it?
Never.
Right.
Never.
Right.
So with the book, when is it out and where can we buy it?
It is out. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Audible. If you listen, it is on Audible. If you just go to www.leaderarmorbook.com, leaderarmorbook.com. I think right now, or by the time this comes out, the digital I'm running a very good special in the digital version, like really cheap, just because I want to get it out to people and I want people to read it. So I think I have a deal right now for $7. You get a digital copy. Amazon, you can get it for, I don't know, 20. But if you go to leaderarmorbook.com, I give it to you for $7. It's a very good deal, because I just want people to read it, because I truly believe that it can help people.
That's an amazing offer, actually. All that experience that you've distilled into that book for $7. That's amazing.
Or like I said, if you want to go to Amazon and pay $20 for it, knock yourself out. I'd be happy that way too. Just leave me an honest review. Notice I didn't say a good review, although I hope it's good. I'd rather have an honest review, because I'm kind of brainstorming the next one, and I want as much feedback as possible. Hopefully most of it's good, but I think we really learn from the bad feedback even more.
Well, we will link all this down below so that you can click straight through and you can buy the book and get all that amazing knowledge from years and years of experience. Ed, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to you again.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks for having me back.
You've been watching on YouTube or listening on an audio platform to the Kuno podcast. If you like what you're hearing, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any amazing content, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Kuno Coaching.